Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and today I'm going to be reviewing Blue Tide by Jenna-Lynne Duncan, and I was sent this for review by Clean Teen Publishing, so thank you so much, Clean Teen, for sending me this. I'm still really amazed that they sent it to me because I was so excited to read this. So this book takes place in sort of a post-apocalyptic world where the entire Earth has flooded, and the few survivors are kind of just living on islands and at sea and whatnot in sort of a Waterworld-esque type of way. And basically, our main character, Lux, is one of the very few survivors from the US. She and her parents are the only ones from the US that she knows of that survived. And basically, she is living on an island that mostly houses, people from Samoa and Japan who survived. And she really wants to go back to the US to see if it is, in fact, all the way underwater, everyone says, or if there are actually survivors, if any of it is left. But basically, in her attempt to go and do that, she is kidnapped by pirates. She tries to, finds some way to escape and get her fellow kidnappees back home as well, but in the process ends up falling in love with the pirate captain Draven. So the thing that made me the most excited about this book is that both of the main characters, Lux and Draven, are Middle Eastern, and I knew that this was very Middle East inspired because the author actually, even though she's not Middle Eastern, she has a degree in Middle East studies, and that made me really excited because I totally thought oh yeah, she probably knows all about what she's talking about. But even though there is a lot of Arabic dialogue and whatnot in this, neither of the two main characters are actually given an ethnicity. And I know that, Draven's lack of an ethnicity could be justified by the fact that he just never told Lux where he was from. So, I mean, yes, there would have been ways for her to find that out, really, but honestly, you could just say, oh, well, he never would have told her, so I guess it makes sense that she doesn't know what country he's from. But the fact that Lux is half Middle Eastern, her father was born in the Middle East, but she never says where he's from at all. So I feel she should have at least been given an ethnicity, honestly. So at one point she actually, in her internal dialogue, or her internal monologue, she actually wonders if Draven is from the same country that her father came from, and honestly, how hard is it to say, I wondered if he was from insert country here, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, whatever, like my father was. Yeah, so the fact that Lux was not even given an ethnicity kind of made me sad. I mean, hopefully in the second book, we'll find out where each of them is actually from, because presumably, the second book is going to take them to the Middle East. But I really do like the fact that this book touched on sort of the theme of her father having gone by an American nickname and taking her mother's maiden name and everything for his career in politics, because I mean, Middle Easterners, when they're American, a lot of people will go by an American nickname. My relatives included, my Uncle Ferryboards just started going by Ferris, and my aunt, Ashley, she was actually Afsane, and she changed it to Ashley. And basically, that's just a thing that Middle Easterners do when they, leave the Middle East, because there's, so much weird, anti-Middle East stuff. And so the fact that, I just loved the fact that Lux's dad, was a politician, and that's a theme that was touched on, the fact that he didn't feel like he could fully embrace his Middle Eastern identity as a politician, because that's definitely something that I think about sometimes. I'll sometimes think in passing, well, what if when I'm 50 I want to run for public office? I have to be able to say, I'm not Middle Eastern, no way, even though I totally am. So I don't know, it's just weird to me, and I'm glad that this book kind of talked about that. But besides the two main characters' lack of an ethnicity, there was one other main plot point that kind of bugged me, and basically that's the fact that during the last third of the book, Lux ends up spending a lot, way too much time with this dude who she's kind of attracted to but not really, and doesn't entirely trust, because in her gut she kind of feels there's something he's not telling me, like he's hiding something, he knows more than he lets on, like blah de blah. And so it started feeling like this weird, like, Stockholm syndrome-y plot point that did not need to be there. Because this dude, like, it basically was reminiscent of, like, an abusive relationship when she doesn't even actually like the guy that much. She kind of, like in passing sort of thinks he's attractive, but she's already in love with Draven, so she's not really thinking of this guy as more than, like, a friend. But he's, like, obviously trying to be with her and, like, not taking no for an answer and trying to, like, isolate her from everybody, and it just, like, some of that was, like, really uncomfortable to read about, and I felt like it went on for, like, a little bit too long. And as a musician, I am definitely, like, no stranger to, people stalking you and kind of not taking no for an answer and expecting shit from you, and that's really what this, like, read like. So I started feeling really weird reading it, and I don't know if it's just my own experiences that made me a little bit uncomfortable reading that, or if, like, I would have been anyway. But basically I felt like that whole story arc could maybe have been stronger if, for example, he was actually a potential love interest instead of just kind of. And that Lux didn't distrust him until he turns out to be untrustworthy, or if he doesn't have an interest in Lux romantically and is just using her to get towards his goal, basically. But overall, I really, really love the way that this is such a fast-paced book, and it's really piratey. So if you're looking for, like, a good piratey story that's, like, super adventure-y and all that stuff, this is super, super good. Also, I loved the relationship between Lux and Draven. I thought that it was really good, and it was, like, I know a lot of people really like the hate to love trope, and that's totally what this is. So I guess if you're a fan of that trope, like, definitely you should check this out. And Lux is such a great character. She's so much fun to read about and really complex. And I just love characters that are like her and that are, like, spoiled and entitled and kind of, like, throw death threats around, like, all the time. Like, hey, don't touch me or I'll kill you. Even though she couldn't actually kill the person because they're, like, way stronger than her. And so I just really, like, I thought her personality was just so entertaining, and the way that she, like, gets herself into trouble just because she's full of herself, basically, and just because she's rebellious was just really fun to read about somehow. And another thing that made this book really, really good is that there are seriously only 2 white people in the whole book, and they don't even show up until, like, the last third of the book, if not, like, the very end. I just loved that. Like, the entire cast of characters is either Middle Eastern or Japanese or Samoan, so it was just really cool. There are a few ways, however, that I thought that this book could have improved. For instance, the first 50 pages were a little bit hard to get into just because the way that the world is introduced and the way that things get explained to us was really weird. It was done really weirdly. So, for example, it ended up it mentioned the US before actually explaining that it was a post-apocalyptic world and not a fantasy world. So I kind of thought for a minute there, like, wait, what's going on here? I thought this was a fantasy. But then once you find out that it is a post-apocalyptic world, in a sense, like, you can see what's going on. But it kind of throws you off at the beginning because the name of the island that she's on is a fictional name. But then it mentions the US and you're like, what? There are real countries in this? But no, but it's basically like, if you go into it knowing that this is a post-apocalyptic world, like, that's not gonna throw you off. But basically just some stuff like that, I thought it was explained really weirdly and it confused me for a second. And then also there were a couple of things, like, every once in a while with the writing that I thought was a little bit weird. So, for example, when it says that Lux is using water to wash away the heat, and I kind of thought, well, does that mean she's drinking it, or does that mean she's pouring it on herself? Like, what is she doing with the water to wash away the heat? I legit don't know what that means. So there was, like, the occasional little thing like that was, like, no big deal, but still kind of was confusing. And then also there were, like, really small discrepancies, like, why are pirates wearing armor on a ship that's, like, made out of metal and everything, so if they fall overboard, they're totally gonna sink. And I know they're not in, like, full-on armor that's all metal, but they're still wearing, like, metal chest plates and stuff like that. So it's like, no pirate is really gonna like wear that in case they fall overboard. Like, are you sure that's a good idea? And just like some stuff like that, and also some plot points that felt like a little bit too convenient, but overall I thought this was like a super good adventure story, and I'm definitely like really glad that I read it, and I gave it 3 stars. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know if you've read this book. I would love to talk about it with you. I'm like aching to talk about it with people who have read it, because like I know nobody personally who has read it. So yeah, definitely if you've read it, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!